Have you ever noticed how the moment you stop texting first, he starts reaching out? The second you stop waiting by the phone, he suddenly wants your time? It's not a coincidence, it's psychology. See, the more you care too much, the more they care too little. But the moment you let go, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, something shifts. You become magnetic, not because you're chasing, but because you're finally choosing you. And that is when the chase begins. We often mistake detachment for rejection, as if letting go of someone or something automatically means we've stopped caring. But that's not the truth. Detachment isn't a cold shoulder. It's a conscious act of self-respect. It means choosing yourself when someone else keeps choosing confusion. It's the decision to no longer beg for breadcrumbs when you know you deserve the whole meal. When you detach, you're not saying, I don't love you anymore. You're saying, I love myself enough not to chase someone who keeps walking away. In relationships, especially romantic ones, it's easy to get caught in a cycle of overinvestment. You give, you try, you explain, you compromise, you compromise, you compromise, you compromise, you compromise, you compromise, until you forget where your boundaries are. Until your emotions are wrapped entirely around someone else's validation. And when that validation doesn't come, you fall apart. That's not love, that's emotional dependency dressed up as commitment. And that's why detachment is so powerful, because it's the act of removing your emotional well-being from someone else's hands and placing it back where it belongs, with you. When you detach, it doesn't mean you stop caring about the person. It means you stop allowing their behavior to dictate your peace. You stop being available for emotional roller coasters. You stop participating in dynamics where you give everything and get very little in return. Detachment is a shift from, I need you to act a certain way so I can feel okay, to no matter how you act, I will be okay. And when you reach that point, everything changes. You start to see clearly. You stop making excuses. You stop tolerating inconsistency disguised as love. People often fear detachment because they think it signals the end. But it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the moment you stop begging and start choosing. The moment you realize that silence can say more than shouting ever could. The moment you recognize that your energy is sacred and not everyone deserves front row access to it. Detachment teaches you that someone's inability to show up for you isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of where they are on their own journey. And you don't have to carry that weight for them. There's a strange shift that happens when you truly detach. Suddenly, the person who was taking you for granted begins to notice your absence. The one who thought you'd never walk away starts to wonder why you did. But by then, something within you has changed. You're no longer waiting for them to come around. You're no longer checking your phone hoping for a message. You've reclaimed your power. And whether they come back or not doesn't define your peace anymore. Detachment is not about revenge. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about genuinely releasing someone from the responsibility of making you happy. It's the highest form of love for yourself, one that says, I can love you, but I don't have to lose myself doing it. And in that space of calm, grounded self-respect, you'll find clarity. You'll find freedom. You'll find the version of you that you abandoned while trying to hold someone else together. The truth is, people feel energy. When you're anxious, overinvested, desperate to hold on, they feel that. And more often than not, they pull away. But when you're centered, at peace, detached, not out of bitterness, but out of wholeness, they feel that too. And that's the energy that draws them back, not because you chased, but because you let go. Detachment doesn't push people away. It reveals who is willing to stay without being pulled. And that, more than anything, is the kind of love worth holding on to. There's something powerful about not being fully known. It's not about playing games or withholding love. It's about maintaining a sense of self that doesn't get lost in someone else's gaze. When everything is predictable, when every question is already answered, when every emotion is explained in real time, something quietly dies. That something is curiosity. And without curiosity, desire fades. The truth is, certainty kills curiosity. The more someone knows exactly where they stand with you, with no room for mystery, discovery, or challenge, the less they feel the need to explore you further. Human beings are wired to be drawn to what feels just out of reach. Not unavailable, but intriguing. We chase what we don't fully understand. Because mystery invites imagination. It activates the part of our brain that thrives on solving puzzles and making meaning. But when a person is too accessible, when their emotions are completely laid bare without boundaries, it removes the sense of pursuit. The dynamic becomes too easy, too safe, and ironically, too dull. That doesn't mean you need to be cold or distant. It means you need to leave space for wonder, for questions, for the organic pull of someone wanting to understand you without being spoon-fed your entire inner world. When you care too much too soon, when you lay every card on the table without discernment, you remove the dance. You rush intimacy, and in doing so, you bypass depth. Because real closeness isn't built on immediacy. It's built on layers, slowly, thoughtfully, over time. The more you reveal all at once, the less someone has to work to earn the privilege of knowing you. And what comes too easily is often taken for granted. Certainty creates emotional complacency. There's nothing left to reach for, nothing left to learn, and soon, nothing left to feel excited about. This doesn't mean you should hide who you are or pretend to be someone else. Authenticity is essential, but so is pacing. So is discernment. So is knowing that not everyone deserves instant access to your deepest truths. There's strength in giving someone just enough to feel your presence, but not so much that they feel like they've already seen everything. That balance creates interest. That interest leads to connection. And that connection, when nurtured with patience, can grow into something real. We often confuse love with over-availability. We think that being open means being open all the time, about everything, with everyone. But vulnerability without boundaries isn't intimacy. It's exposure. And exposure, when not earned, isn't valued. Certainty tells the other person, you don't have to work for this. It tells them, you already have it all, so there's no need to keep showing up. That message kills effort. And where there's no effort, love loses its spark. Curiosity is what keeps relationships alive. It's the question marks that draw us in, not the periods. It's wondering what someone is thinking, what they're feeling, what matters to them, and knowing they're wondering the same about you. When both people are invested in learning each other over time, the bond deepens. But when one person hands over all the answers too quickly, the conversation goes flat. There's nothing left to explore. So the next time you feel the urge to overshare, to overgive, to overexplain in the name of love, ask yourself if you're creating space for connection or smothering it. Ask yourself if you're letting someone earn you or just giving yourself away out of fear. Because when you hold just a bit back, not in manipulation, but in grounded self-awareness, you invite someone to lean in, to ask, to notice, to care. And that kind of curiosity, the kind that keeps unfolding, is what real love thrives on. There's a fine line between love and emotional overinvestment, and too often we cross it without realizing. We think we're loving deeply, giving fully, being devoted, but what we're actually doing is abandoning ourselves in the process. Emotional overinvestment isn't an act of love. It's an act of avoidance. It's a way to distract ourselves from our own fears, emptiness, or unmet needs by focusing entirely on someone else. We pour everything into the relationship, not because it's healthy or balanced, but because it gives us something to obsess over, to fix, to cling to. Something that feels like purpose, even when it's quietly draining us. When you make someone else your emotional project, you lose sight of your own growth. You stop asking, what do I want? What do I need? Who am I becoming? And instead ask, how can I get them to stay? What do they need from me? What more can I give? You become so consumed with maintaining the connection that you lose connection with yourself. That kind of investment isn't love, It's fear disguised as devotion. It's the fear of being alone, the fear of not being enough, the fear of losing control. And so you give more, try harder, prove louder, thinking that if you just do enough, they'll finally love you the way you crave. But love doesn't ask you to lose yourself. It doesn't require you to shrink, to perform, to chase. Healthy love is reciprocal. It breathes. It allows room for individuality. Overinvestment, on the other hand, is lopsided. It's when one person starts carrying the emotional weight for two. And even if that looks like loyalty or passion on the surface, it's rooted in imbalance. Because when you're constantly trying to meet someone else's needs while ignoring your own, you're not building a relationship. You're building a one-sided dependency that's bound to collapse under its own weight. The harsh truth is, we sometimes invest emotionally in people who haven't earned that access. We do it hoping they'll change, hoping they'll eventually see our worth. But all it really does is teach them they don't have to do much to keep us around, that our presence comes with no conditions, no boundaries, no standard. And that's not love. That's self-abandonment in the name of staying relevant to someone who may not even be emotionally present. We need to understand that love doesn't grow from over-effort. It grows from mutual energy. It thrives where both people are showing up. Both people are investing. Both people are emotionally mature enough to give and receive. When you're the only one carrying the load, you're not in love. You're in labor. And no matter how hard you work, you can't make someone feel something they're not ready to feel or give what they don't have. Overinvestment also blocks us from seeing reality clearly. When you're too deep in emotionally, you start rationalizing red flags, you overlook disrespect, excuse inconsistency, and keep giving chances that were never earned. You become addicted to the idea of what the relationship could be and blind to what it actually is. That illusion keeps you stuck. It convinces you that if you just hang on a little longer, they'll change. It'll get better. Your efforts will finally pay off. But people don't grow under pressure. They grow in their own time. And your overinvestment won't accelerate that. If anything, it relieves them of the responsibility to grow at all. Real love isn't about giving your entire emotional world away and hoping someone treats it with care. It's about sharing your world, not surrendering it. It's about being full on your own and choosing to let someone in, not needing them to fill the empty parts of you. When you stop overinvesting, you start chasing love and start attracting it. Not because you need it to survive, but because you're whole enough to receive it without losing yourself. Sometimes the loudest message you can send is the one you don't speak at all. Silence, when used with intention, carries a power that no amount of explaining, arguing, or pleading ever could. It doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've let go of trying to be heard by someone who isn't listening. It's choosing to preserve your energy instead of wasting it trying to convince someone of your worth. Because when you fall silent, not out of resentment, but from self-respect, it forces the other person to sit with the consequences of your absence, not just the comfort of your presence. Where repeating yourself becomes emotional labor that's not reciprocated. And at that point, silence becomes a boundary, a signal that says, I'm no longer available for conversations that only go in circles. In relationships, silence often makes people uncomfortable, especially those who are used to you always reaching out, always fixing, always making it okay. But that discomfort is where growth happens. When someone can no longer rely on your constant reassurance, your endless explanations, your forgiving voice on the other end of every mistake, they start to feel the gap. And in that gap, reflection begins. Silence creates space, space for them to think, to feel, to question their own behavior without your narration guiding them through it. This kind of silence isn't the same as emotional shutdown or passive aggression. It's not about manipulation or punishment. It's about protection. It's about no longer using your voice to rescue a dynamic that keeps leaving you unheard. It's the conscious decision to stop pouring your energy into someone who only listens when it's convenient. It's giving yourself permission to be still, and in that stillness, to heal. There's a sacred strength in the kind of silence that comes from clarity. You're not avoiding the hard conversation, you've already had it. Maybe more times than you can count. You're not holding back your truth, you've shared it, and it didn't matter. So now, instead of repeating yourself, you let your absence say everything. You let the unanswered text, the unreturned call, the unspoken words reflect what you've already tried to express. Because sometimes the silence that follows a storm is the clearest sound of all. People notice when your energy shifts, when your presence no longer fills their inbox, when your name no longer lights up their screen, when your voice, the one they took for granted, is suddenly missing. And in that quiet, they're forced to ask questions they once ignored. Why did you stop talking? Why did you pull back? What changed? The answer is simple. You did. You realize that trying to be understood by someone who doesn't want to understand you is a losing game. You realize that begging for clarity, consistency, or closure only keeps you in cycles that drain your spirit. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that peace sometimes comes not from speaking, but from stepping back, from detaching with dignity, from refusing to fight for a seat at a table where you were always made to feel like a burden. And in that silence, you find yourself again, your strength, your voice, not the one that shouts to be heard, but the one that whispers, you deserve better, and actually listens. Let your silence be your statement. Let it say what your words no longer can. Not because you're afraid to speak, but because you finally understand that you don't have to keep explaining yourself to someone who never truly wanted to hear you. There comes a moment in every relationship where the need to control starts to suffocate the connection. We often don't realize it's happening. We call it caring. We think we're just being involved, attentive, responsible for how things turn out. But underneath that caring is often fear. Fear of loss, of rejection, of not being enough. So we hold tighter. We overthink every text, analyze every word, and try to manage the entire emotional climate of the relationship. But here's the truth most of us don't want to admit. The more you try to control someone, the less they feel free. And love cannot grow where freedom doesn't live. That's why the chase, the real mutual desire, only begins when control ends. When you let go of trying to steer everything, you create space. And in that space, something powerful happens. The other person gets to choose you, not because they were pressured or pursued, but because they want to. You stop trying to predict their next move or sculpt their feelings, and instead you allow reality to show you the truth. If they come closer, it's because they feel drawn to you, not dragged. If they pull away, it's because they were never truly present. Either way, you win. Because letting go of control is how you invite authenticity. So many of us have been taught that love must be earned through effort, through constant availability, over-communication, and fixing every problem before it arises. But that's not love. That's performance. Real love is not about being perfect or proving your worth through control. It's about showing up as you are and allowing someone else the freedom to meet you there. Or not. And that's where most of us struggle. We want certainty. We want assurance. But we go about it in the wrong way. We chase, we cling, we orchestrate, all to avoid the discomfort of the unknown. Ironically, the moment we stop doing those things, when we pull back, surrender, and focus on ourselves, is the moment others often become more interested, not because we're playing games, but because self-possession is attractive. Confidence isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the way you stop needing someone's response to validate your value. It's the way you stop overreaching and let your presence speak for itself. When you stop trying to convince someone to choose you, you become the kind of person who doesn't need convincing. There is a kind of calm that only comes when you're no longer trying to control every outcome. You no longer panic when someone pulls away. You don't chase after inconsistency. You don't fight to be understood where understanding is not being offered. You begin to trust that what's meant for you will come without force, and what's not will fall away, no matter how tightly you hold on. In that kind, you find power. Not the kind that manipulates, but the kind that magnetizes. The kind that says, I know my value, and I trust the right people will see it. When you release control, you create emotional breathing room. You stop trying to manage another person's feelings, reactions, and choices. You show up with openness, not obligation, and that's where genuine interest begins to grow. Because no one wants to feel like they're being emotionally cornered. People want to feel inspired to move toward you, not guilted into staying. The chase, the pursuit, the connection, it only comes alive in freedom, in choice. In fact, it's often the most courageous, intentional choice you can make. It means you've reached a level of emotional maturity where you no longer need to force outcomes, manipulate feelings, or cling to relationships that aren't flowing naturally. True influence doesn't come from pressure or persuasion. It comes from presence, clarity, and detachment. When you let go, you stop chasing people and start inviting their respect. You stop trying to control the story and start allowing your authenticity to speak louder than your effort ever could. We've been taught that influence looks like being convincing, persuasive, persistent. But when it comes to love, connection, and emotional dynamics, the opposite is often true. The more you push, the more resistance you create. The more you hold on, the more they pull away. But when you stop trying to make someone see your worth and instead walk in it with quiet confidence, something shifts. They feel the energy change. They feel the absence of your emotional labor. And they begin to notice what they took for granted. Letting go is not passive. It's not retreating out of fear or insecurity. It's an active decision to release your grip on something that's draining your peace. It's choosing to step back, not to punish, but to protect your inner space. It's how you reclaim your power after pouring too much of it into someone who didn't know how to hold it. When you stop showing up where your presence isn't being honored, you force people to face the impact of your absence. That moment is more influential than 1,000 conversations where you beg to be seen or heard. There's a kind of strength that doesn't need to explain itself. It just is. Letting go means trusting that your value doesn't decrease because someone failed to recognize it. It means you don't need to stay in proximity to prove your loyalty or love. You can love someone deeply and still walk away. You can forgive someone completely and still choose not to continue the relationship. That kind of quiet, grounded detachment influences people in ways control never could, because it teaches by example. And it shows what self-respect looks like in real time. When you let go, you're no longer tangled in someone else's emotional chaos. You're no longer trying to manage their reactions, fix their wounds, or carry the weight of their indecision. You return to your center. And from that center, you lead. You influence. Not with force, but with freedom. You give the other person the dignity of their own choices and the space to experience the natural consequences of those choices. That's not cold, that's love, with boundaries. And boundaries are where influence becomes sustainable. Letting go also brings clarity. It reveals who was truly aligned with you and who was only attached to the version of you they could control. When you stop bending, shrinking, or pleasing just to keep someone around, you begin to see what's real. And in that clarity, your influence grows. Not because you chased anyone, but because you showed what it means to live with emotional integrity. In the end, letting go is an act of leadership. It's a declaration that your peace is non-negotiable, your presence is a privilege, and your energy will not be wasted trying to convince someone of something they must choose for themselves. That's influence. The kind that lasts. The kind that doesn't beg to be noticed, but can't be ignored. Because the most powerful people in the room are the ones who don't cling to anything or anyone to prove they belong. They simply let go, and in doing so,